And she said, Miss Van Pelt should be here now. And I said, I am Miss Van Pelt. And so that, kind of changed my thinking and what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. Anyway, I got the job. Could have worked for him later in life.
Okay, hold it, wait. I got to ask you a question about that now. So now the lady, the secretary there,
Right.
When she found out that you were the person,
Right.
how did she handle that?
She apologized. And she said, oh, I'm so sorry. But instant quick, I knew what the gist of it was. They had looked at VAN, capital PELT, and they were looking for another face, which was okay. I'm used to that.
Back in the day, Velvet, if you were Smith or Stevenson, they probably presumed that you were black, but it was very few people had names like Van Pelt.
And Velvet.
And Velvet.
The two, I don't know.
And so that was quite occasion.
It was a double whammy.
Yeah, so that, I could understand that. And even today, when I hear some of the names of black people, I say, well, that doesn't sound like a black name. And you cannot go by the names anymore to distinguish somebody ethnic background or so forth. But back in our early childhood, you could.
Well, when you speak of, the names, you look at some of the names today that these kids are giving their children, they are hampering them, because these Shaniquas and so forth,
Yeah.
I mean, you name your child what you want, but you do have to think they do pay consequences down the road with it, So.
But Archie, you beat me to that because I was going to bring that up because, but let me ask you, during the time that you all were at Central, there's a lot of turbulence going on across America. How were the relationships between the black students and white students at Central, since at that point in time, the whites were still the predominant group?
Well, with speaking for myself, because we came from McCulloch, so we knew we had a lot of white friends there, and we had some white friends at Harmon too. Being sports, you're around all ethnic groups, so we didn't have really any problems. I mean, I'd say the majority of us got along well. Now I can't, there were some flare-ups naturally, but I'd say the majority of the kids at Central got along well. You still had your cliques, we ran in certain groups, they ran in their groups, but basically we got along,
So now, what about this interracial dating thing? How was that?
That was a no-no. I mean, it happened. Don't say it didn't happen, but they frowned on it. They didn't like it. If you were caught, say, bringing a young lady home of another race, Caucasian to be, if you were caught downtown somewhere, if the police stopped you, you'd probably go to jail.
Seriously?
Yes.
Archie, I don't think it was any of us athletes at our time that dealt with dating white girls. I know you didn't, and I know I didn't. I know Cletus didn't. I know Preston didn't, and I know Martin, Jimmy didn't, and so forth. But it was a common thing, and many of the young people our age, as you well know, many of them end up going to boys' school because they got caught dating white girls, and their parents were not fond of that, and they were good people, but they end up going to boys' school. And if they had been a little older, they would have had a felony behind their names, because often they use the term of statutory rape, so forth. But I'm glad they didn't bother our black girls too much back then. But that was a common practice. But one of the things I would say back then, so forth, us blacks in Fort Wayne, we had not migrated to other cities where blacks was doing positive things. And so we got a little complacent. And even though we could go to school with whites and could disagree with them, yet and still we knew our place. And our place was Eliza Street, Hayden Street, Madison Street, and there are limitations, and you would not go in the white areas or so forth. You would see them at school and you would not fight against them or so forth, but certain things that they enjoyed that we were not exposed to, just like how many of us was involved in drama, how many of us were members of some of their special clubs that they had in high school. We didn't get involved in those things. All of our social activities were centered around the McCulloch Center at that time.
Well, Velvet, with that type of a truth being a reality for you all, how did that not hamper your maturity and growth and ability to deal with different cultural groups? Because I've seen you ordering blacks, whites, whoever is in front of you to tell them what to do, and you never showed any resistance or any type of not being sure of yourself.
Well, I think, like I said, that all comes from home. First, I said, I have a strong mother and a strong father. And I knew what I wanted to do. I kind of knew at an early age, but I never wanted to work for anyone. That's why I started off in business for myself until I started my family. But I think being a female, too, I think having a strong father figure in the home, which the kids don't have a lot of that today. No one could tell me anything that my father or mother hadn't already instilled in me from home. So I think that made me a little more sure of what I was, what I could do, and I wasn't afraid to take a chance. That's another thing. I wasn't afraid to step out there and go beyond the boundaries. But I think just being a female, I wasn't exposed to things that, most of the males would have seen. I was talking to Archie earlier. He was telling me about a section of town he was very familiar with. In like 5th and 6th grade, I wouldn't have known anything about that, but I never rode a bike. What he said, McCulloch Center was our starting, but in clubs, like at school, I was in the Republican Club. So I don't know how that fit, and I think it was 19 in that group, and I think it was 2 blacks. So being girls, I think you just got along a little better, and not that we didn't get upset with each other about different things that were going on, but we handled it differently.
But now you said something there, the Republican Club. Rick, let me go back to you on this one here. At that point in time, blacks were still primarily Republicans, am I correct? Because the civil rights stuff hadn't happened yet.
Right.
And the civil rights stuff is what the
We call them
Democrats
Lincoln
bought.
Republicans.
Okay.
Yes. And there might be 1 or 2 Lincoln Republicans still around. And we say Lincoln Republicans because, as we know from history, that Lincoln was the president that was responsible for freeing the slaves. So blacks, they cling to the Republican Party for a long time. And if you go back and study history, you'll find that it was the Democrat Party that was the ones or the group of political people that was against civil rights and voting rights, and it was the Republicans that was supporting those issues. But it kind of flip-flopped when Roosevelt came on the scene, and then later John F. Kennedy and so forth. And back in the day, you go and you look at Frederick Douglass, and Frederick Douglass would say it's a poor black man that would ever vote as a Democrat. And that's kind of flip-flop now, because you get a bad feeling if someone is black and they're a Republican.